Hey everybody, welcome back to your free TV, TGIF. It is Friday, January 16th, 2026, and I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel. Thank you so much for supporting. I'll jump right in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. We're going to jump right here into the news tonight. We see from the thumbnail, President Trump in Palm Beach this evening after a massively long week, getting a reward there down in Palm Beach of having a huge road there in Palm Beach renamed after him as Donald J. Trump Boulevard, which I love, and which inspires him. And I say we have MLK Day coming up on Monday, and across the nation there are MLK boulevards everywhere. And I'm putting my 2 cents in here is just let's have lots of Donald J. Trump boulevards across the USA. And I say keep naming it all after Donald J. Trump because he is the one basically who has saved America from total defeat and destruction. And just as MLK did such amazing things while being an imperfect man, so has Donald J. Trump basically saved America at this vital time in history for all Americans. And as MLK always said, a merit-based society, a merit-based democracy, so does Donald J. Trump, returning that to us now. So it is very exciting, all of the news today. I'm going to jump in as, of course, we have so many threats going on as well that are super hazardous, super disturbing. Of course, Indivisible and Arabella Investments, the George Soros-funded Tides Foundation, etc., have been busing in tons and tons of Antifa into Minneapolis. They have near frigid weather there. And of course, this weekend's going to be a big one to see what they can pull off there. And, I'm fully behind the doing the Insurrection Act there in Minneapolis because we have clearly massive violent mob rule situations. That it's not even mob rule. It's just these paid Antifa members and protesters going in to create massive violence as much as they can, using children, using babies, all of this getting more and more disgusting. Trump needs to shut it down, and I hope that he does. We'll see what happens over the weekend. And Mike Lindell, of course, still massively up in the polls there for governor of Minnesota going forward. So very, very interesting. So much to say. So we're going to continue on here with the news. Trump got together in his conference today for Rural Health Care Symposium, the Rural Health Care Symposium. This has to do with the Great Health Care Plan. Kind of an empty title. Maybe great. I think it was Emmett Oz who threw Great American Health Care Plan. Basically, but hugely important. We get basically $50 billion, never happening before, to rural America to increase funding from, they're basically taking money they recovered and, strangled back out of the Doge efforts there from the Medicaid fraud that they had already known about before they went into what is now just almost $1 trillion, but definitely hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicare fraud and abuse. But basically, RFK Jr., Secretary Rollins, Mehmet Oz, all of them there together meeting about this and talking about how they're bringing basically $50 billion into rural America to try to support health care in rural America. And the kind of little interesting segue here, or sideline, or whatever you want to call it, is that basically this has a lot to do with the advancements of robotics and AI in healthcare. So I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It does seem like this has a lot to do with basically, the 60 million rural Americans getting to be kind of the test groups here for what will be a huge amount of robotics brought in, rural clinics created that will deal with telehealth, medicine, AI used in all of this. And I am not a fan of that, obviously. But yeah, they're building out this infrastructure and talking about having RX drug um, kiosks and machines there that people can get their drugs right there. They're talking about drone delivery of drugs. And why do we need drugs? Why does everybody need so many drugs? But some people do. Some people really do. And so I get that. I really liked what he had to say about the health plan yesterday to do with that they're going to make over the counter things like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, etc. But there is a time where people need other very important life-saving drugs. So very interesting what went down there at this rural healthcare symposium. You had Senator Dan Sullivan there out of Alaska, and Trump was really pissed off at him and basically was saying, um, you know, uh, are you going to get Murkowski to vote for the new Trump health or the great healthcare plan? And pissed off at him because him and Murkowski with Hawley and Collins all voted to extend the Obamacare subsidies for 3 years, but that didn't pass. And so very interesting there to watch all of that go down. And they're putting 1.4 billion of this 50 billion straight into Alaska because it looks like Alaska, being in its hostile environment, the hardest to reach, to create these healthcare options. And so it looks like a lot of that infrastructure rollout of AI and robotics, et cetera, will be happening there in Alaska. And so it'll be interesting to watch as that goes on. We did see, and I'll get into this next week, that we see the passing of a $174 billion bill, appropriations, continuing resolution style, to fund the government going forward. And so we'll get into that next week and what's going to go on there. But I did want to cover this because very, very interesting. We get um, multiple, so many interesting things, but I'll get into this. Of course, the EU is holding military exercises now in Greenland, and there's so much, and I probably should have started with this, but this is so huge. What's happening here with the EU, Carney being a major operative, of course, massive globalist, former governor and director out of the Fed, out of the City of London, out of the Canadian Fed. He made a trip to China, met with the premier there. I discussed it in other videos, and basically coming out talking about a new world order. very He deliberately, very deliberately said new world order, like very solemnly, like George H.W. Bush would have. But this is not the globalist world order that has now been defeated. This is the EU and the Crown basically coming in for how can the British Empire, who has no land, they don't care about, obviously, the British people at all whatsoever. It's all about money and banks and people and royalty and the European International, and they're still praying one day that they can conquer the world in this one world government. And with Carney getting together with the CCP, basically almost, but not quite, saying that we might be trading in yuan out of Canada. We might be going full BRICS. We might be undermining basically the US dollar, as we're seeing. And I'll get more into that in this video because I think that's huge, that we could quickly see a change where all of a sudden the EU loves Russia, right? They don't care about Ukraine. It's frigid. It's like 5 degrees in Ukraine during the day. People are freezing to death. The mayor of Kiev is going full bore against Zelensky. This whole thing of the sacrifice of Ukraine looks like it's coming rapidly, and it should come to everybody's attention that that's what happens. That when the globalists, the fraudsters, the demonic a-holes who come in and pay people billions of dollars to have gold toilets and do whatever they want to do while they slaughter everybody and destroy everything. that then you will be sacrificed. And we're going to be seeing this with Zelensky soon, I believe, and the mayor of Kiev coming up hard against him. We'll see what goes on there, but prayers for everybody freezing to death in Kiev tonight and across Ukraine, because this has just been a slaughter fest. And what they're going to do, I believe, is the EU will quite likely it depends. It depends the way the wind blows, what happens at Davos next week, right? It's going to be a huge deal. We're going to be getting into it. Is that you could quickly see the EU shift, okay, seriously, right away from Ukraine and start courting Russia again. And of course, the CCP, they want to volunteer their taxpayers, their people that support the economies of the EU and Canada to China now, just as the US has been doing and done, and what happened to the destruction of our country for the last 50 plus years is now being slated over to the EU and Canada, because the people who own them, the bankster elites that are planning to go after every Australian who speaks out right now with the massive hate speech laws coming out, and everything happening to basically first world Christian countries. That's what it is that Christianity provides freedom, and they need to kill it at every step, which is why we have Pope Leo going to Angola to create Chrislam, to further join with the Muslim nations, etc. Is that they will do whatever they can to stop first world countries' populist movements. And so what we're seeing here now is that the EU is holding military exercises in Greenland. It's so hysterical, because you watch Macron, okay, basically he has like a really bloodied right eye. His right eye is like, looks like how we used to see those bloodied right eyes in all those videos, right, where you get something happens at a ritual, something happens at your lodge, at your Masonic lodge, and then suddenly you come out and you have your whole right eye is bloodied. Well, that's Macron right now. And he was out with his troops. It was like 40 or 50 people dressed up in military garb, I guess is the French soldiers. He's walking like he is looking out at his military, and it's just like, a bunch of dilapidated looking people, and basically saying we are now going to be holding military exercises in Greenland, the EU. Okay, and so this is a little problem, a little issue, because the U.S. Funds NATO, it funds the military of the EU, and it's still to the tune of 85%. And this ridiculous whole event going on, right, where it seems pretty clear that Greenland kind of wants to take the money and wants to be on the winning team of America, while you've got Macron coming out and saying um, Greenland belongs to the EU. Greenland belongs to the EU, and that's what happens when you become part of a union, right? That is a globalist union. It turns out Greenland doesn't belong to Denmark anymore, doesn't belong to the Danes, to the royals of Denmark. It belongs to the EU. And so coming out very strongly saying that they are going to fight any U.S. Takeover of Greenland. And of course, Trump is showing no military might here at all whatsoever, just saying that we can make a great economic offer to Greenland, because we need you. Trump also said needs it for the Golden Dome. Got to wonder about that, as we're hearing that what we get, two different things here. I'll just throw them in real quick, and then I'll continue on that. But basically, we're seeing the U.S. Senate voting on yesterday to approve billions of dollars in funding for federal science agencies that were rejected already by the White House. The Senate bill approved massive amounts of funding for NASA. They're going, of course, Artemis 2 mission is about to launch. They're going to go over to the dark side of the moon, spend 10 days up there. By 2032, hotels on the moon. The billionaires can go and spend their time doing whatever they do on the moon in their little moon hotels. But yeah, Artemis 2 kicking off. But anyway, tons of money to NASA, but it's really the National Science Foundation that's getting a lot of money, $8.75 billion to the National um, Science Foundation, and largely to do massively with quantum information science, quantum technology, and artificial intelligence, of course. And so very interesting to see there, but also NOAA, who delivers to us our lovely chemtrails and our disgusting, just total toxic wasteland that they keep making this country and use for their weather wars. Well, they're getting $634 million to NOAA that the White House had tried to cut down, but the Senate opposed them. That is Thune. Okay, 202-224 3121 for your regular senators who voted for this, and for Thune it is 2321. So there you go. So they say that money for NOAA, that $634 million, is so that they can better improve their weather forecasting, right? Yeah. And then, of course, at the same time, we get out of HHS that they are going to be conducting a study on cell phone radiation. RFK Jr. Basically saying that, neurological damage and cancer coming from cell phones. They're going to be conducting this study on cell phone radiation, and that's fantastic. They've taken down the FDA has taken down their pages saying that cell phones aren't dangerous. But meanwhile, meanwhile, they're just going to keep rippling our skies with the massive arrays that go out, and the massive antenna arrays that create the EMF blanketing, that create the control of the weather, but also create massive disturbances on all of our neurological processes. So, we'll keep covering that as it goes on. But let's move on from there. So as Greenland continues, we're seeing so much more besides. I wanted to talk about a couple of things here alongside that is, do I want to cover that now? Let me see. Yeah, we want to get rid of Brian Belger, who an SES member, senior executive service member, still director of TSA. Still director of TSA. He is the one who ran the Quiet Skies program, targeting most famously Tulsi Gabbard and so many others. I think, Nick Fuentes, but there's just, so many hundreds of Americans to do with J6, et cetera, who were basically banned from travel, massively harassed. And he is still in charge, Brian Belger at the SES. And it looks like he was involved in trying to prevent the U.S. Marshals from getting their pay raise this year because of their involvement with ICE. And this guy is still there at the TSA. Why? Why under Kristi Noem's DHS is this man still in charge over at TSA, Brian Belger? SES, Senior Executive Service, meaning Pilgrim Society top-down member, who continues to be able to be in this position. And I'm sure part of this is trying to challenge the SES portion, but Trump has basically, I thought he won that. I thought he won that, that he was able to defund these SES members. But of course, it keeps going back and forth, and we're still waiting to see what the Supreme Court is going to do, of course, about the tariffs. That's the huge one coming up. But basically, this retaliation against U.S. Marshals was massively, give it up to Brianna Morello. Brianna Morello, she does the American Journal, but she's also a massive Pentagon correspondent. And she was connected with Sonia Labasco, retired out of the U.S. Marshals after a senior position there, where they were able to alert the Pentagon of what was going on and DHS and get that raise for the U.S. Marshals. So very interesting there to watch that all go down. Very disturbing and awful. But we have really incredible news, such incredible news. Okay, this news alone should be, you know, Donald J. Trump boulevards everywhere. That there is at least a 21% plus decrease in overdose deaths in 2025 because of what he has been doing to stop fentanyl and collect up the cartels. Huge. Okay, so that is massive. Of course, with also the murder rates so far down, another incredible thing. And we want to mention that because it's very important. And so I wanted to, of course, mention Maria Machado, and I will put this up here, this New York Post, where she did actually give the Nobel Prize directly to Trump, gave it to him. And of course, this sent the Oslo Globalist Committee of the Nobel Committee into total, head spinning ire, and they said you cannot transfer the Nobel Prize. It cannot be transferred to anybody else, et cetera, et cetera. But she gave it to Trump, and she basically said, "This is from the Venezuelan people, and we trust you to do the right thing." So this was after their meeting yesterday, and remarks were held back from Machado or Trump. They didn't talk, but we know that Ratcliffe out of CIA was having a meeting today with Delcy Rodriguez there as the head of Venezuela right now. And so we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but hopefully it was a very productive meeting. What Machado had to say, she did give remarks today. This was at the Heritage Foundation. And it was really lovely to watch. I don't think anybody can watch Maria Machado and not just see light in her eyes, see, a bow of God around her. She does have an incredible presence that really seems of God and genuine. I want to say that on this channel because I do believe that the EU was really trying to use her, really trying to basically get her aligned with them, and hence the Nobel Peace Prize, hence trying to get her aligned with them. Trump made the move to take out Maduro, using him for very specific purposes to do with the identification of many players. A lot of this is financial, and a lot of it is about stolen elections. It's a lot going on behind the scenes here. But Machado basically came out and said, that Trump Trump cares about the Venezuelan people after our meeting. I know that for sure, and I know Venezuela will be free and will be having elections soon, and that we're going to be basically looking out for what comes. She said what Venezuela wants is a merit-based society. They want to go back to what they were before the socialist takeover of Chavez and Maduro. That which they were. They were the fifth largest economy in the world. They had a better overall standard of living than the United States of America. They had an incredibly huge, massive middle class. And she says that's all they want. That's all Venezuela wants is a merit-based society without handouts, without socialism, to come back to self-determination and especially dignity. And so we will see. She also made a point of saying Delcy Rodriguez, the stepdaughter with her brother, both of them very, very intelligent, but super psychopaths, basically saying that they absolutely are aligned with the external forces of the CCP, what's coming out of Russia and Iran, and that they are 100% communist. And that basically she's saying, but the people of Venezuela, and she's also saying, this is interesting, that so much of the military is not of that same ilk. So it's very interesting. She basically said, I'm very confident we will have a transition in Venezuela and an election coming up after talking and meeting with Donald J. Trump. And of course, the release of political prisoners has been huge in this. What she had to say was that she's been speaking with families that hadn't even spoken out before because they didn't even want to make themselves targets in talking about their family members who are missing, and that basically we're seeing huge amounts of release of prisoners. She's calling for immediate dismantling of all the torture centers. And that would be good, in Venezuela and Caracas, etc. And so we prayers for that whole process. It is very exciting because it does get into the 72 elections stolen through the globalist CIA network, with MI6, Mossad, etc., in what has been the traditional regime change, color revolution for the one world government, coming out, where the one world government is a communist, fascist government. That is what they had planned for. They've been losing since Donald J. Trump came along in all of our participation to fight for the world. So it is very, very exciting. And so as we look at this, we're looking at Australia, of course, facing the opposite, where they are being hugely oppressed, as we're seeing these hate laws being rolled out after the Bondi Beach massacre. And we're seeing basically where they are naming that it's the Nazis they're going after, that it is the white supremacists, the white nationalists of Australia, and they can go to prison for 12 years, and that the only protected classes seem to be Jews and possibly Sikhs. Okay, they have basically announced that Catholics or Christians do not constitute a group with characteristics that can qualify for hate law protection. Okay, so we see, the proof in the pudding. We see what's going on, the same thing as everywhere else. And they're slow to come out with the Islamophobia because, for whatever reason, they're wanting to depower Islam in Australia. Interestingly, because across Europe and across the UK, not that. So we'll see what keeps going. It's going to be interesting to watch. And along those lines, in our own country, we're seeing out of Washington State. They're trying to, and they're pushing this through the U.S. blue cities with, of course, the COP50 mayors, the World Economic Forum mayors, where they're trying to push this statutes to decertify sheriffs who aren't aligned with liberalism, globalist, Agenda 2030 goals in these cities, but get elected, of course, through populist Americans, basically electing them. And here in Seattle, or close by, Pierce County, the sheriff Keith Swain, basically being attacked there in Washington. And remember, of course, the crazy Seattle mayor, Katie Hopkins, and the ilk around her, trying to communize Seattle immediately. And basically, what they're saying here is that they're going to decertify the election of this sheriff. And he basically said, if you want to put contingencies on me, that I have to take certain tests, answer certain questions, and basically agree with your agenda, then I want every single official that is elected or put in place in Washington State to have to undergo these kind of measures, take polygraph tests, basically have to have background checks, go through social media, have all their social media totally totally background check it, and also criminal charges, have they ever been arrested, etc. He said, that's what I want if you're going to basically do this to me. So they're trying to attack him. They're trying to attack anywhere in Washington State. And of course, Bill Gates, we know, is the big funder of Washington State in general, along with other massive globalists that formerly were on the massive green agenda, but now they see that carbon capture isn't a thing anymore. Now it's all AI. So they're full bore, don't care, don't care about the environment, don't care about anything. But you know who does? Is Trump. And what came out here from Trump today, which is very exciting, is that he has said that he is going to cap residential energy utility costs. Basically, he's saying that he understands the threat coming in with AI and the building of new energy to support AI. And he's saying those two things are not going to be set off against each other, that basically he's going to make AI companies and the big tech companies have to pay for any large energy costs. And he's saying that Americans need to have their utility costs cut and capped, basically going after the green energy crap in all of the blue states and Florida with DeSantis, who just has this love of solar for whatever reason. We know the reason, but basically saying, we're for, all the states that are bringing back the coal, bringing back the natural gas, bringing back the cheap energy, and basically giving people good affordable energy that he is fighting so hard to get produced rapidly and cheaply, that they'll be capping the costs on that, and that anything that's produced beyond that or that comes into play will be on the shoulders of big tech companies and AI, and will not fall back to the American people. That is huge, and there's going to be a lot more coming out about it. I'm sure after also Davos next week, we're going to be getting a lot about it. And so also, you might have noticed with the thumbnail, we're getting reports that, of course, we know Lindsey Graham ran to hold the hand of Netanyahu so they can plan whatever's coming next, right? And with Iran, etc. We saw Reza Pahlavi today having a huge press conference in DC, as the director of Mossad is supposedly also meeting there in Washington with the Pentagon planners. And we wonder about, of course, Ratcliffe, etc., that we're seeing, Mossad director in DC, and we're seeing Reza Pahlavi, the former crown prince, who was like a tween when, his father was overthrown, and they were sent out of Iran, who wants to be the new interim head of Iran for this regime change. Trump has been pushing for transition instead of massive change or assault. And so, what the situation here with Pahlavi is, he's very much a royals guy. He's very much an EU, very much a Bank of England guy, 100%. And there is this push for the EU and England, the royals, to handle this control, this shift, this what looks like a Ukraine 2.0 type of made-on coup revolution here in Iran, very much mixed with very, very real turmoil in Iran. Very, very real. The people are suffering massively under what has become an oligarch-controlled society, the mullahs and the IRGC, and we're seeing, some of the IRGC going opposite ways. But what we see with Pahlavi, with this huge, huge press conference in DC today, went on for a very long time, basically saying, install me for a transition period to bring in the democracy infrastructure, to bring in a parliament system, and then we'll have elections within 2 years, right? Kind of thing. And this is, in my belief, part of the Empire Strikes Back sort of effort here that's going on. So I'm wondering where Trump is in here, because we don't have the full picture of where Trump is, except that he seems to have disappointed a lot of people by not going in more full bore. We know that we have the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier battle group going in there, heading there in that direction of Iran. And we will see what goes on over the weekend here. But this Trump, I believe that Trump and his team know what they're doing. And the prayers here is that USA does not get involved in Iran, except to prevent the EU from taking it over. However, at the end of the day, let them take it over. I mean, is it that big of a deal? the big deal here is that you get the Greater Israel Project aligned with the EU, as they always have been, but massively it was the US who had the money and the might and the firepower for the last 60 years plus that Israel has been so attached to. But of course, now we're getting Carney emerging as being a huge player here in out of Canada as a sort of EU leader here, because as Ursula von der Leyen and all of the EU is basically flagging and failing and not able to be any presence on the world stage. We'll see what comes out of Davos. Carney being positioned as a leader of the EU, as a dominion of the UK, not in the EU at all, but still, he's he makes very clear, this is about the EU, this is about European relations with Canada, with China, with Russia, putting this out there that we could see this transition where all of a sudden the EU goes from not claiming those Russian assets to being, hey, take Ukraine, whatever. Just let's keep the money flowing. And what we're seeing here with Carney is, of course, just looking back. Remember that Dominion was located. It was Toronto, or it was Dominion Machines. They had moved up there for a while. They were sharing same building space with Open Societies Foundation. Massive amounts of fentanyl. Remember the years and years under Trudeau of training with the CCP, etc., military operations. And so it's very interesting to see all of this going down with Carney being positioned in such a large way in what is the playing out of the Pilgrim Society's mode here to deal with Trump's new national security policy and war policy and protectionism for the Western Hemisphere versus the one world government of the EU. And so they're basically, they're positioning where Canada is this massive landmass, so is Greenland, where they can basically try to align with a close proximity threat to the United States. So we're going to keep watching it because they don't have the money for it, and they certainly don't have the military for it. So if Trump plays his cards right in his administration, they never will, because we absolutely are in the director's seat here when it comes to military might, especially with China kind of playing both sides and Russia supposedly still in our corner. And so we have to see what's going to come out of there. What we heard from Carney was that basically he basically, and just remember, just as the EU has sacrificed their people, Carney absolutely, along with Trudeau, continuing on, is to sacrifice the Canadians. That's why 10% of the people are being killed by euthanasia. This awful situation of the poor Canadian, too nice people not understanding their rights, that it comes a time where you have to defend yourself. And I'm not talking about to the thousands and thousands who have been protesting the massive tyranny, but the rest of them. And so basically with Carney's New World Order, and this partnership with the CCP, he's referencing the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Trump, of course, got out of in 2016, got out of it again this year. But basically, he's saying that Trump has eroded what was the rules-based order, and we need to replace it with something he's calling the New World Order, and that he is calling on coalitions of subsectors of the world. And so it's very interesting to see how they're pushing Carney up to the top here, as we're seeing people like Merz in Germany, the head of Germany, coming out and saying, oh, it was really bad how we destroyed our nuclear power industry 3 years ago and totally took everything offline. we're going to have to fix that. Of course, along with that, they've gone back to getting coal-powered energy back up and running in Germany as well. And so this is all going down where rapidly you're seeing the EU, because they're the banksters, they have the money, really trying to shuffle quickly the world stage here in response to Trump bringing America back, shutting off the total theft of our country, and of course protecting the homeland in this hemispheric defense, something they have not seen for over 130 years. So it is very exciting to watch it all play out, and I think we're going to see a lot more what comes out of Davos next week, and we might see a lot more of what comes out of the uh, Insurrection Act after this weekend, whatever goes down in Minneapolis. We have so much going on in this country with all of us, because from within, just as the Antifa in Minneapolis, we have within our own councils, our own city and town councils, the thing like what's happening to the sheriff in Washington, how they're planning to do that, to decertify sheriffs that are constitutionally and ethically mandated to defend the people of America. They're going after them, and they're going after all of us, and have been for some time. And another thing that's coming up, I just want to put this out as well to look out for, is that they're going for what they're trying to do. We know in New York they're going hard, as I mentioned yesterday, that they want Blackstone in there to own all the real estate, because then whatever calamity, whether they burn it down or they make a World Economic Forum public-private partnership with Blackstone, BlackRock et al. For the new communist, cheap housing, but basically free housing that is the most disgusting. Maybe no longer coffin apartments. They won't even be that nice. They won't even be smart anymore. They will be smart, but what I'm saying is they won't be nice. Okay, they might be smart and they might have all the technology, but they'll be ugly, and they will be brutalist architecture, and it will be disgusting. And so what they're coming up with in these blue states is something what they're calling real estate, high value real estate transfer taxes. High value real estate transfer taxes. So anticipating Trump's desires to get affordability, now they're pushing this high value real estate transfer tax for anybody who has had their real estate, their property massively inflated fakely, okay, through the buying up of so many properties by Blackstone and BlackRock, etc. And so nobody can afford to rent anything. Nobody can afford to do anything, because everybody's got, if they have anything, it's just Airbnbs. Like, how can we get people in to pay us thousands of dollars a week to just stay in our tiny place? And all the inflation of the fake inflation of the values of these properties. Well, now, and this is the same thing. This is what happens, and this is what greed does. Is that then you get slapped back, right, with the communist regime, the plan all along of what is fascism, communism, what has been called Nazism, is fascism and communism combined, right, where it's corporate-owned infrastructure that is meant to bleed the people dry until they have nothing left. And so this high-value real estate transfer tax, they're calling it a transfer fee, where they basically, for all these inflated properties they invented out of nowhere, now are going to be having huge taxes on top of, because Trump still hasn't gotten rid of course, the corporate gains, the capital gains tax, right? All of that still is not solid because of our crappy, disgusting Congress and Senate. But yeah, the capital gains tax, all of that Well, basically, they're putting on high value real estate transfer fees, which is a transfer tax, meaning you sell your property, you're going to pay a hell of a lot more, okay, in this extra tax to these blue states and probably some rhino states as well. So we'll keep following that as I see more about it, and I'll be covering it more next week. All right. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and you got maybe some extra information or value, please support the channel. There's ways to do so below. I'm not going to plug tonight for my fantastic, awesome sponsor. I'll just show them. c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off. I'll get more into them next week. The miracle molecule that cleans out your mitochondria and keeps your brain fresh. But anyway, thanks so much for watching TGIF. I hope over the weekend that you get to spend it with family, that you don't do any doom scrolling whatsoever, that you stay up with the things that matter in your life, and give yourself a break from the news, and really embrace the whole reason we're here, which is to live, and be with humans and enjoy human activity, and of course, fellowship and God. Please get free this weekend, be free, and enjoy life. That's the whole point of everything we're fighting for, is that you take time out. We know people are suffering across the world. So if there's people suffering in your own life, go and offer them hope and joy and help and fellowship, and also enjoy this beautiful planet, with nature and sunshine, and everything that gives you, hope and glory. Go for that this weekend. Thanks so much for watching. You are free. I'll be back with you on Monday. You are free.